Hey, Armand here with your forecast for the week of June 3rd, 2019. Now, this is a very Neptunian month we have coming up. If you've watched the monthly forecast, and you should, you know it's a very Neptunian month. But as we get out of the new moon on Monday this week, we actually have a pretty good opportunity period for a few days. Let's sort of break it down and go along. Monday itself is not the best of all possible days to get things done because it's the new moon and it's a very quiet internal energy. It's a good time to sort of plant seeds and think about what you want to grow, especially in the area of your daily life. The daily life is the stuff that we don't really think about. It's not quite as exciting as, let's say, for example, relationship and career and things like that. But you know, it's where we spend most of our life. And so the new moon in Gemini is a very good time to sort of get started with that. It's also a good time to think about and, you know, maybe take a few tentative steps towards a new skill you'd like to learn, a book that you'd like to read or something along those lines as well. It's a great time for doing things that are just verbal in nature. And with Mercury out of bounds in the end of Gemini, one thing that we might want to think about this week is the tendency to say too much. Another tendency, especially after Tuesday, when Mercury has gone into Cancer, is a tendency to say too much too quickly about emotional stuff. In other words, you can it's wonderful to open up and share your heart and things like that. I'm not cautioning against that. But what I'm saying is that, you know, sometimes, you know, in the moment, you're just a little bit, you know, excited and excitable and just blurt something out. And so we want to kind of be aware of that. You know, of course, you'll have good control over that. I have great control of that, but we have to be tolerant of the other folks, you know, who are maybe not so good at keeping control of themselves. Now, another consideration, while we have Mercury moving very quickly and out of bounds and at the last degree of Gemini and then at the first degree of Cancer, is people might have some real issues driving. You know, it's like a real fast car. Not everybody can drive a really fast car. You know, this is a 0 to 80 in half a second type of aspect. And, you know, it's great. Once again, it's great. You can do wonderful things. It's great. If you have a writing project to do this week, boy, you know, just sit down and write it all out. At some point, you'll have to come back and edit it. But boom, there it goes. All right, that's the beginning of the week. Probably around Wednesday is the time when we can really start to do stuff. The moon will be in Cancer, which is often kind of protective, but the first aspect the moon makes is a sextile to Uranus. So maybe we're feeling we can change routine a little bit. We can do things a little bit differently. Now, that is actually a big theme this week for a lot of different reasons, like Mercury is going to sextile Uranus, and we have a bunch of other aspects that are really quite helpful for this. That kind of innovative, do things differently, take a different road, try something different is about the best strategy for most of this week in anything. It's just a very experimental, but not crazy experimental, just sort of an open, let's try to do things a little bit differently. It's in work, it's in relationship, it's in everything. So kind of go into this week with that in mind. You know, this is going to be a time for new ideas popping up, having a lot of flexibility, and, you know, making the most of it. As we get through the week and we start looking at Wednesday afternoon, I think that might be the high pressure point, right around you know, Eastern time zone after lunch on Wednesday. If you're in Europe, it would be probably more along the lines of later in the evening. There might be some more pressure on at that particular point in time, work deadlines and so on. It might be the time when we don't feel we're quite so flexible, or we don't really have the opportunity to be as flexible as we sort of hoping to be over the last day or so. One area that is really going to get a lot of activity on Wednesday is relationship. And this is really specific to, you know, usually with relationship, it's Venus we're talking about, and it'll always be something along the lines of, you know, well, it's all of your different types of relationships and things like that. But this is Pluto opposing Juno, the asteroid Juno, which is really a partnership asteroid. This is much more like a personal partnership spouse type of asteroid. And then the moon is going to aspect both of them. So the Cancer moon will meet up with Juno, very conservative kind of placement, and oppose Pluto. So relationships, romantic kind of personal relationships, however you like to call it, very much going to be in focus on Wednesday. By Thursday, things kind of ease out a little bit. So speaking of Thursday, the moon goes into Leo later in the day, after that sort of pressured energy continues a bit through the morning. And then Thursday afternoon into Friday, we have some really, really good stuff going on. This is the point in time at which Mercury is sextile to Uranus with the moon in Leo, and the Leo moon gets square to Uranus. The moon is already waxing. We're at a sextile from the new moon. It's a pretty good time. So we want to look at this and say, this is a good opportunity for doing a lot of stuff. Friday is your day this week. I mean, you can do lots of stuff Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's no two ways about it. Tuesday's pretty good too. But if you really, really, really want to just pick the day, pick Friday. I know usually it's like, well, the end of the week is probably not the best time, but this time it is. Friday night is probably the best night for going out as well. So, Saturday night should be fun. It should be good. But if you had only picked one, go out Friday night. It is the very end of Venus in her home sign of Taurus, which is great. So, that really adds that extra little bit of sensual, fun, pleasure, just enjoy yourself kind of feel to things. On Saturday night or Sunday morning in Europe, Venus will leave Taurus and go into Gemini, and that sets the tone for the next few weeks of this kind of, it's more sociable, fun, lighthearted type of thing, especially after she's been through some tough stuff or challenging things or deep things in the last week or so with aspects to Saturn and Pluto. There's definitely a much more light kind of feel to Venus and Gemini. She'll be talking to Jupiter and so on. So things are kind of good and just sort of light. As we get towards Sunday, though, Saturday and Sunday, be aware that the sun is square to Neptune. And this begins that very Neptunian portion, that very Neptunian month. With the sun square to Neptune, it's very likely that people will be, ordinary folks become gods and goddesses. They become demons and villains. It's very easy. This thing about the phone going off during the video has to stop, people. There is really quite a bit of tendency to magnify things. And it happens while the moon is in Virgo, which is a time when we tend to be very precise. So the way that you kind of can look at this is there's a real potential to make mountains out of molehills. There's, the food, take the dinner back. I don't like it because this little piece of celery, was cut improperly. Stuff like that could happen. It's, the Virgo moon kind of wants us to focus on health. Sun square Neptune is thinking otherwise. So there's this sort of back and forth between, too much of things and focusing on details, maybe not seeing the forest through the trees. Great energy to enjoy yourself if you're enjoying yourself. Meditate, watch movies, stuff like that. Fantasize, play with things, make a piece of music or something like that, write a song, write a book. Mercury's still going nice and fast. But, maybe this is not a great time. Saturday, Sunday is not a great time to be making tough decisions and, all sorts of life-changing kinds of maneuvers. All right, that's a basic sum of what's going on this week. You probably would like to stop by the website, armanddiaz.com, sign up for the free weekly newsletter, or just send me an email and I'll put you on the list. And that gives you the things like the moon void times and other helpful stuff. All right, I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye.